2005, Keith Hallett interviewing John Dawes. John, we believe you were the youngest member of the 39th. Could you tell us how that came about?
I would have been one of the youngest, not necessarily the youngest. But, yes, when the war started, my main worry was that it would end before I could get there. And anyhow, I lived at Maston at the time. Dad was a builder. And we had a bit of work in Melbourne, so I was stopping in Melbourne with my grandmother. And every Friday night, we'd go into Melbourne and into the town hall and listen to the music and the people there urging young blokes to enlist. After squaring it for a couple of nights in there, at last I marched in. I couldn't resist it and told them I was 21, took all my particulars, had to go back in a day or so to be sworn in.
How old were you?
I was not 16 and a half. Anyhow, when I went to get sworn in, the sergeant challenged me about my age. I thought I looked 21, but he didn't think that. And anyhow, he told me I owned up I was only 19. So he told me to go home and get my parents' consent, which I had no hope of getting. So I signed my own consent, with their names of course, went back and I was sworn in. During the swearing in, somehow my initials got mixed up. My initial is J.A. Dawes, John Alexander, went down as A.J. Dawes. But I said nothing, I didn't want to rock the boat. I had a guilty conscience, I suppose. Anyhow, at the time, that's right, I had ingrown toenails and had to consent to have them fixed. I sent to Broadmeadows, the remedial training there, and then Heidelberg Hospital and got fixed up, then back to Broadmeadows, and we did our training there. Route marches, learning how to dig trenches, and bayonet practice and the like, shooting rifles, firing off rounds at the butts, and then from Broadmeadows we went down to Balcombe and did our initial training there. Nothing like jungle warfare or anything, and eventually we were told we were going away. Some of our mates were in an awkward position, some were up the arms, we had no idea where we were going. Anyhow, we got final leave and finally went on board the Taruna, the old passenger bloke that ran from Melbourne to Tasmania, and there we sailed.
Now when you got your final leave,
yeah,
what did Mum and Dad say?
Well, I forget, but when I first joined up, I rang up home, rang Dad, he said, I'll get you out of it. Of course, that had me worried. But anyhow, he'd tried to do the same thing in the First World War himself. He got in and was called into the COs one day, and here's a letter on this bloke's desk in his mother's handwriting. But he got slammed into clink, even though he's underage. But one thing my mother did say after I joined up, she said, you might get killed. She was very upset. And I said, it won't make any difference in 100 years, but would have made a hell of a difference. I wouldn't be here. And I've enjoyed life. But anyhow, on the Taruna, I was pretty lucky. We were the first as troops to be carried on them. And I got a little cabin all to myself. And we had the nice white blankets, no sheets, but yeah, that was good.
Did you know you were going to New Guinea?
I think by now we did. I just forget. But we used to have to do light boat drill, and only one day I was among the last to get on up to lifeboat drill, and they wanted some blokes to work in the cookhouse. So I got sentenced to the voyage in the cookhouse, which was pretty good. When I with the crew down in the kitchen peeling spuds, well, they was for the office and the likes of us who were part of the crew. Then the rest got potatoes done in a tumbler. There wasn't either anything. And we ate the same as the officers, which was pretty good. We didn't have to go and lifeboat drill or anything. So I'd have peeled spuds forever down there. Anyhow, on the way up, we got a bit of a scare. Actually, one of our own flying boats arrived doing patrol, and the alarm was sounded, and we all had to get below decks, but I think it was only a practice run. And anyhow, finally we got into Port Moresby, and we disembarked there.
What was your feeling about coming into a foreign country for the first time?
Well, I was pretty excited about it. It was a great adventure to me, and no, it was pretty good. There was blokes getting around with dints in their tin hats as though they'd been hit by shrapnel or something, but I think it was done with a pick to make them look good, you know. And Hadley and I, we didn't know each other until this moment. Hadley and I, well then, were to go to the mortars, we found out. And we were sent to some part of headquarter company to be sent to the mortars, taken around and the crew we were to go to the next day. Well, the blokes we were camping with were pretty dispirited, really. And I wasn't feeling that happy with the situation, but when we arrived at the mortars, we were to go and be attached to, that was overlooking the 7 Mile Drum, garden had grown from paratroopers, and we were attached to Bill Merritt's E Company, machine gun company. And they were different blokes altogether. Doug Reed, our corporal, and he was a very nice fellow. And he taught Hadley and I all we knew about the mortar. And we became pretty efficient at that.
What was life like on the 7 Mile? Were there mosquitoes?
Oh, was there? We were issued with mosquito nets, and I got, for some reason, I got a one too short for myself, and I poked my feet down through the end of it and ripped it to bits. And I was several days before they got me another mosquito net, and I was nearly driven mad. I used to get under my blanket all night, and it'd be too hot, so I'd have to throw it off. And the mosquitoes would swarm, you could swap your face, and it was just a mass of mosquitoes crunched up. Anyhow, I never got malaria or anything at that time, and I got a new net, so that was good.
What about food and drink at the time in Moresby?
Well, the food there, just the usual army ration. We'd have porridge at breakfast with, I forgot, I can remember having sausages and beans, although that was back in Broadmeadows, but similar things. We had tea, of course. Burgoo, we called the porridge. And, well, we were happy enough, you know.
And letters home?
Oh, yes, we were able to write letters which were censored by our officers, which I didn't know, but I never said anything nasty about them, so it didn't matter much. And we'd get letters from home, and well, periodically. At that stage, we got a bottle of beer a night, which was real good. But some of the blokes were unloading a ship down in Moresby at the wharf, and the general come down and they was all drinking. They'd got into the beer supply, so that ended our beer supply and we all got punished. But anyhow, that didn't hurt us. Of course, we smoked real good tobacco, nice tin tobacco, which was real good quality.
How did the commander deal with your beer drinking? What were the punishments?
We just never ever got any more. He banned us having our bottle a day.
It's a logical consequence.
I suppose we got punished for what the others done, but we'd have done the same ourselves. It would have been down at the war.
Had the bombings from the Japanese started by the time you got there?
Oh yes, nearly every day they raided the drone. I think it was 2 or 3 shots would ring out, and that was the warning, because we had our blokes overlooking the drone at Lay or somewhere, so we knew when they was coming. We got plenty of warning, and we had a slit trench dug. Well, when we arrived they had this, and some logs over the centre of it, and dirt over that, and we'd crouch in these. We're pretty safe. You just about had to have a direct hit to be hurt in an air raid.
This was the first time that you were ever under attack, wasn't it?
Yes, yes.
How did you feel the very first time?
A bit stirry in the stomach, was turning over a bit, but we got more or less used to it. In all, I counted, we went through about 130 air raids. Well, then I gave up counting, so it was a lot more than that. It'd be up to when we went into the mountains.
Now, when you went into the mountains on the Kokoda Track, was it a matter of having to go, or did they call for volunteers?
Well, the main force that was, if they had to go, there was decided to go, and the mortar platoon wasn't called on to go, but they wanted 3 of us from the mortars to go. Well, this is when E Company were going over. There was 3 from the mortars and 3 from the pioneers. Well, our officer was Phil Gardner at the time, come round to our tent, told us he wanted 3 volunteers. Well, I looked at Headley Norman. I said, what about it, Norm? He said, 2, right? So we went. And another chap, Don Sands, from another gun crew went. Headley and I were IIF. Don was a militiaman. And that made no difference. It didn't matter whether he was IIF or militia. They were damn good soldiers, and that was about it as far as I'm concerned. Of course, back home we used to give the militia cheek and call them chocos, but once we got up there, no way. They were good soldiers, as the 39th Battalion proved. But we went down to the Jackson's crib to be flown over to Kokoda. And anyhow, we were about ready to get on the plane when the word came through the Japs had taken Kokoda, so we had to walk.
Now, had you heard stories about what the track was like before you started walking?
Oh, well, we heard about the gap, as they called it. No Jap could ever get through that. And but anyhow, that turned out to be just rubbish. It was a great valley, miles wide. But we started off. First stop was Uberian. I found it all very interesting. I just, as a kid, we lived at Masset, and I just learned to love the bush and the trees and everything, and the streams, rivers. Yes, I thought it was terrific. Anyhow, from Newberry, I think the next village was Urubaya. I'm not sure when we had to go up where the Golden Stairs ended up, up there to Meadow Ridge. That was a real trial then, because it was so steep that today the steepness was like perhaps a present-day railway embankments. It was so steep. Then there was, you could look up and think, oh, that's the top, and it'd level out and go for a short distance, perhaps a few change, and up again. Well, it took us half a day to get to the top of this ridge. And I got to the top, and I thought, oh, beauty, we're going downhill. Well, going downhill, it jarred my knees pretty badly, and even to this day I have trouble with my knees. I could never stand for long all my life. But anyhow, I got by. But after that, we went, the whole company kept together going those first days. And then it was decided we could go in pairs or small groups after that. Anyhow, Hedley and I, of course, went together. We're very good mates since we met when we first got to Moresby. And I'm not sure what village, could have been Norome. It was on the top of a very steep knoll. Very, very steep. And Hedley and I got up there, we were first, and we unloaded our packs, and Hedley said, well, come on, we'll go back down and we'll see if we can help some of the others up. Well, down at the bottom was one of our native carriers, absolutely exhausted. He's lying back on his load, he was puffing and panting. Anyhow, Hedley pulls out his own tobacco and rolls him a smoke and stuck it in his mouth and lit it. And then, after he'd had a bit of a rest, we helped him up to the village and carried his load for him. That was Hedley's idea. That was the sort of bloke Hedley was. Quick thinker and helped others. From Norrow, the next village was Manari. Anyhow, between Norrow and Manari, we stopped for lunch on a ridge and a little stream ran down. And I thought, oh, it looked a likely place for gold, which I'd always been interested in. And I washed a handful or two in my Dixie, but got no gold. But anyhow, I memorised it. I thought, well, I might come back here one day, which I never did. Anyhow, we got to Manari and found out we weren't to stop there. We had a double run that day, and we walked on and on. I remember a native come from the opposite direction, and Hedley asked him, he said, how far next village? The native said, 1 mile. Oh, gee, that's beautiful, we can do that. Anyhow, we walked and walked a lot more than 1 mile, and another native came along. And I remember Hedley saying, how far next village? 10 miles. Well, we were ready to drop. Okay. Anyhow, finally, Efogi was the next village, but I can't remember stopping there. But I think we might have had to go right through to Kagi. When we got there, some of the carriers were building a hut while we watched and waited. There was a great team of them, and they worked really well together and got this hut up, and that's where we spent the night. I remember that night there must have been an air raid in Moresby, because over the mountains looking across we could see the searchlights from all that distance. anyhow, from there we went to Aurora Creek village, and that's where we stopped. Some of the B company was there, who had been fighting around Kokoda and beyond, and the rest of E company went on to join other companies that went before us, and us three mortars were left at Aurora Creek village and put into B company, and also some of them were at Isaravan, and I got the job of taking a bunch of us to
Three
Isaravan.
crossings to make.
Oh,
What were they like?
well, from Aurora Creek on, they were pretty hairy, but we made it. I didn't know of anyone who fell in.
No one fell in?
Well, they would have been, but I never saw them. We must have nearly. I remember, yeah, it was not real easy. And it was, Aurora Creek was a wild, rushing stream. Fantastic stream, really, if we wasn't going to war along it.
Now, you've spoken at the earlier time that you enjoyed the jungle and the trees and exploring for gold.
Yeah.
Did any of those pleasures disappear as you went further down the track, or could you still enjoy the environment you were in?
I think as we got, towards Isaravan, my mind was occupied otherwise. We knew the fighting was just up the track at Deniki, and I think we were conscious of that more than looking. I know I forgot about looking for gold, and I hear lately there is gold at Isaravan, but no.
You arrived at Isaravan on your 17th birthday, is that right?
Well, I was about 17 and 6 or 7 weeks or something. Yeah. And while we were there, we used to do just 2-man reconnaissance patrol. I remember Les Martirana, he was a platoon sergeant in B Company. Les sent in Headley and I off, and he drew on the ground something like a shape like a cow's hoof. If you look for footprints like this, they were the 2-toed shoes or boots that the Japs wore, and they could climb up trees with them. But anyhow, we used to go on these patrols and head down to Aurora Creek and around there, but we never struck any trouble there. And around that time, stretchers started coming back and wounded on them from Deniki. Actually, while I was there was some very awkward part of the track just forward of Isaravan. I think I counted 16 native carriers handling a wounded bloke around this pub. They were very, very careful, and that just shows how rough the track was. But anyhow, finally we were given our positions at Isaravan. We were up on the high ground to the left of the perimeter, and there we dug our positions, little 2-man hole sort of thing, in pairs at that stage. And also the rest of the battalion got back, and a standing patrol was left forward of Isaravan, between Isaravan and Deniki. I don't know how far, but anyhow, our turn of patrol, a platoon used to go out every day and relieve those that were there. The day we were to go, we're just getting ready to go, sometime in the morning, fairly late in the morning I think it was, and then we heard firing come from the standing patrol, so we knew something was on there. Anyhow, we had to go, And my word had got back, a chap on the listening post had been killed. And we set off. The Padre Earl came with us to bury this bloke. No, I made a great effort to do the proper thing there. He had a strong escort. I think there were 7 or 8 blokes with Tommy guns took him out. Padre only had his shovel. On that patrol, we had the forward scout and the second scout and the main platoon, and I got the job of getaway man. So I was out the back. I reckon I was pretty safe there. But I've often thought lately if they'd have wanted a prisoner, I'd have been an ideal one to nab. But anyhow, nothing happened, and we relieved the patrol that was there and given our positions. And I remember we weren't attacked or anything, although Headley from his positions could see a Jappy'd walk across the track trying to draw fire to where we were. Mm-hmm. And there was a couple of others that popped their heads up and ready to fire, but we weren't falling for that. But I remember all night long, my position was just above a little creek. I could hear stones rolling down and bumping. And I often wonder to this day whether once again they was trying to draw our attention and find out where we were. But anyhow, nothing happened, and next day we were relieved. We went back to Isharava, and the patrol that relieved us, they ended up being cut off. But we went back to our positions up on the high ground, and as the Japs hadn't made contact, of a morning we'd get out of our holes and gather in a little group, 6 of us, and talk. And we're sitting down in a rough circle, and there was the 3 mortars, Roy Denning, Weary Haddock, I can remember. And all of a sudden a burst of a machine gun fire went clean through between our little circle, bobbing along the ground. I remember Weary fell back. Jesus, he said, did you see that? And with that, we just faded away and back to our holes. My position was right up, just up from where this burst hit. Must have been a Jap well up on the high ground or up a tree or something, because all the time at Isharava, while the main battle was on, anyone who moved the bushes just behind my position caused a burst of fire to come through him, but he was firing a bit high. Mm-hmm. And anyhow, that was that. Well, I remember if things went around a bit further or somewhere up further were getting pretty willing or under pressure, they'd take one of us to go around and reinforce where we were being attacked. And that happened to Headley and I. We were sort of down the side a bit, and we copped a lot of fire coming down the ridge behind us. We were just forward of the ridge. Naturally, you don't dig a position on the top of the ridge where you can be seen. And in the end, they separated Headley and I. I don't know whether they might have reckoned we was pretty reliable, and we got none of them. We'd only been just the next bit down, but we were spread out pretty thin, really. Anyhow, we survived that. Actually, I'd forget how long or when, but the bloke that was with me disappeared. I was on my own. You're supposed to be able to, with a tour, you could have an hour on, hour off during the night. Well, I had no one to relieve me, but through utter exhaustion, I went to sleep of a night. And well, nothing happened, as you can see today. But the Japs would move around at night like that because several of our blokes got bonuses. And also all through the night you could hear grenades exploding and bursts of machine gun fire, so the war didn't stop because it got dark. Anyhow, after, I don't know how long we was on our own. I know our numbers were getting pretty scarce, but we'd held the Japs. At last a company of the 2nd 14th Battalion arrived. I had to go up the ridge past my position to the forward positions up front. When they got to my position, they went out around the front of my position so they didn't rattle the bushes and perhaps be hit with machine gun fire. Anyhow, that happened, well, they bore the brunt of most of the fighting from then on. Anyhow, the last day we were there, the Japs attacked very heavily. There was machine gun fire all day long, cracking over our heads. You could hear it crack. Before you heard the gun open up, you heard the cracking of the bullets going over you. Pretty confusing at times. You didn't realise where it was coming from. Anyhow, they heavily decided late that afternoon they couldn't hold out any longer. The Japs were going to break through, and they decided to withdraw. Well, it was a very orderly withdrawal. There was no panic or anything like that, and they moved back in stages. And I remember they pulled back to my position, which I'd held, managed to hold, and then after a time there, by now it's pretty dusk and getting into the evening, we moved back, a few yards further down the ridge. I think why we had to hold there, the troops getting out along the track below us, if the Japs had got down the ridge, they'd have cut the track. And I think that's why we were to hold them. Anyhow, for a time, we was under the big trees, and as we got back down, it was relatively open country. There's more scrubby, lame sort of bushes, and by now night had set in, but it was a bright moonlight night. But under the big trees it was very dark. Anyhow, they decided to counter-attack just to keep the Japs' heads down. That's all it would have been, because no way could we regain our positions. And there was 12 of us had to counter-attack. We all had Tommy guns. Those that had Tommy guns had to swap for our rifles, those that had rifles. And there was 6 of the 2nd 14 and 6 of the 39. Now the 2nd 14th blokes had to lead the way, take this position, whatever it was, and us 39th blokes then had to hold it. Well, the order was given, the okay to head up the ridge. Well, those 6 young blokes that had to lead, there wasn't a moment of hesitation, and went straight up, and only had gone a few yards. We were behind them about 5 or 6 paces, and there was a burst of a real vicious machine gun fire, possibly from both sides, and I think every one of those blokes were hit, the 2nd 14th bloke. I remember one young bloke who was beside me came back a bit, and his officer said to him, he sternly, he said, "What's wrong with you, Smithy," or whatever his name was. He said, "Oh, I've got it in the head, sir." And he said, "Give us a look." And he got hold of his head and twisted it round so he could see in the moonlight. And then his tone softened. He said, "I think you'd better go back down." Like they were treated as men, no sympathy, but when he had that, we'd been hit. That was different. Those young blokes, when they went up there, back up the ridge, they'd have known damn well what they was going to cop. It was pretty well a suicide attack.
Now, we believe you were the last group to be machine gunned as you left. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. I reckon we copped the first one, and that particular action I'm talking about, that would have been the last burst of firing at Isaraba.
How did you feel when you started to retreat? Was it relief?
Yes.
Yep.
Oh, yes. No, you wouldn't be human if you wasn't, because our position was hopeless. We were more or less out in relatively open ground, and next morning the Japs would have overrun us. We'd hung on as long as we could. It was about 8:30 at night when the order was given that we'd pull out. Well, Headley and I, amongst others, we could have been last. We got down to the track. It's bright moonlight night, and only the two of us around. I think the others had got followed along the track, and here's a tin of dehydrated mutton. Do you want the full story?
Yes.
Well, we thought this was a damn shame. We couldn't let the Japs have that. We were pretty damned hungry. So we levered the tin up and plate side lid these square old kerosene tins, and we peed them. that was all we could do. They possibly ate it anyhow. They'd have been hungry. But anyhow, we got down along the track, and it dipped very sharply at that point down to back creek, as they called it. And under the big trees, it was pitch black down there, even though the night was moonlight. It was pitch black, and we knew when we'd struck the creek, but where the track was leading out through the water, we didn't know. And to find it, we had to strike matches. And anyhow, that showed us the track going out, and you seemed to be able, even though it was dark, you could follow the track, or the bloke in front of you. And we got through there, and we'd have got through to where this Isaraba rest house was supposed to be. Not that I saw any rest house or hut or anything there, whatever it was there. And somehow, I forget, we'd have slept the night there. And it would have been about dinner time that next day that we were given our positions. We were at the back of the Moresby end of the perimeter. We got our dinner that day. It was 4 men to a tin of bully beef. So we stayed hungry. But anyhow, our positions were up off the track and up on the higher ground above the track. The track below us had dropped it was very steep up to the track, once again like a railway embankment, about that steepness, and the ground not quite as steep up to where our positions were. Of course, by then we were just a platoon made up of various ones from others. A lot of the big platoons were decimated, and us 3 mortars were up there. And Titch Knights, I think he was a corporal, Titch was the platoon sergeant. Well, while we was up there, we were just behind trees. You never had time to dig in. We never had shovels anyhow. Not like a Jap. Every Jap had his own little shovel. And while we was there, sometime in the afternoon, the Japs had lobbed a mortar bomb on the front positions, down the front of the track on the Isaraba end of it, and wounded several 2nd 14th blokes. So we were called round to attack this Jap mortar, which we did. The blokes there, 14th Battalion officers, I think, had spotted the smoke where this mortar had been, so we fired a few ranging shots and lobbed one right on where the smoke had been. Oh, when we first got there, the 2nd 14th bloke sang out, "Take that bloody thing away," because the idea, you fire a mortar, you get a reply, and they were frightened more bombs had come over from the Jap. But anyhow, they didn't, luckily. With that, someone yelled out from the on the higher ground above the trap, "They're going round the back." And with that, there was a heavy firing broke out, and us 3 mortars were, well, we didn't know what to do, and we died behind a log. I remember sticking my head up, and anyhow a Jap machine man heavily spotted me because there's a burst of fire, rattled the bushes behind my head and just grazed me, just there. Never, that was all. And we were only there a short time when a runner came up from the 2nd 14th Battalion, handed Dom a watch, was synchronised. I think it was 20 to 5 by now. We would go back to our old position, to the track just below where our position was, and silence a Jap machine gun, which had opened fire on some of our mates there, killed one of them and wounded a couple, including Titch Knights, and also opened up on the track where it, just after this position where it dipped very sharply, and the machine gun opened fire onto some of the sick and wounded blokes being sent out, killing some of them there. One bloke I knew. The bloke who was killed up on our positions, he was an orphan. He never had a soul in the world to write to or receive letters or anything. But anyhow, when we got up, struggled up, was each carried a part of the mortar, and to set it up on the track there was a space just above us through the trees that we could fire through. It was there about that time I saw them carrying Titch Knights out. He was on a stretcher, of course, and I said to him, "You all right, Titch?" He said, "Yeah, just got it in the leg." And that was the last, I think, any of us would have spoke to Titch. As you might have known later on, 2nd 14th blokes got him round to some village and they were betrayed and all killed. But anyhow, there was a chap, I think he's one of the 2nd 14th, had spotted this machine gun up front, and he was only about 3 yards to our right, and he could observe for us. And I got the bombs ready, unscrewed the caps, and there's, in a mortar bomb, there's primary charge like a shotgun cartridge up the tail, and then held around with a spring as these other charges with cordite or some stuff called NCY, I think, little granules or stuff, cellophane packet. Well, the range was so short we had to take those out and just rely on the primary shotgun cartridges, we called them. We fired a couple of ranging shots, and the range, we had to keep dropping it down till it was only on 70 yards. Well, a mortar is dangerous in further than that, and our own shrapnel was flying around us. Anyhow, the bloke who observed for us, one of the bombs, about one of the last we fired, I watched it go up in the air myself. I don't know why I did that, but it seemed to go straight up and turn over and head straight for us. I know once again I stirred in the belly, and I thought, oh well. And anyhow, it landed on the Jap machine gun fire, And the bloke observed that you got him. And with that, he was hitting the arm himself with a bit of shrapnel. I remember, I think between the elbow and the shoulder, I can remember his arm bleeding. But we'd done our bit, and the company of the 2nd 14th then had Buna charge from their position along the track and clear any remaining Japs off the ridge above us, which they did. I remember them, the roar, you know, they were yelling and then charged with the Buna. We had then just leave the gun. Don grabbed the sights. We couldn't carry it and it was pretty desperate. And I slid down this bank below the track, I remember that. And by now we were copying a lot of the fire from the 2nd 14th charge. Anyhow, at last that slackened off, and to get out, we went through an overgrown native garden, which was below the track. We couldn't get along the track, or we wasn't sure it was cleared. And that was where Captain Jacobs was killed. He was carrying 2 rifles and tripped and fell, and one of them went off. And while I wasn't right near him, I suppose I was 70 or 80 yards below him. He was near the track, and I saw the bit of a commotion where he died then. Also, I remember Harry Mortimer carrying a wounded bloke on his shoulder, which really it was a terrific feat on his part. This bloke would have been heavy, and Harry was under great difficulties. Getting yourself out just with your rifle on was enough, but Harry carried this bloke out, and finally we got back on the track. I remember someone singing out, "Did the mortars get out?" He didn't, thought we mightn't have got out, but anyhow I was able to tell him, yeah, I said, I'm one of them. And as we got along the track, we're back on the track by now, we ran up, caught up with this wounded bloke. Both his arms, he'd hit both his arms with Tommy gun slugs, and his arms are tied across his chest. He could have been friendly fire or a Jap using a Tommy gun, but whatever, that's what's warm. And then Al Headley said to me, he said, "Carry me rifle, we'd better help this bloke." That's once again Headley. And we're getting along the track, and Headley's carrying him, he's up in front of me. And up in a very awkward part of the track and steep drop down the side, this poor bloke tripped and fell out of Headley's grasp and just rolled down the slope with his arms like this. And he ended up being caught in some bushes, luckily. God knows how far he would have gone otherwise, but I can see Headley to this day just bounded down after him and dragged him up. And when he got close, I reached down with a rifle and he caught up with that and I managed to pull him back. And anyhow, this bloke, he never said a thing or never moaned or anything. And we got going again. And I just can't remember how far we got him, but we got him back to relatively safely.
As you started going back,
yeah.
You said you never met Doc Vernon, but we believe he was on the track, was he?
Oh, yes. Not when we were going back, but I remember him when we was going over there at Aurora Creek. But he seemed to be, well, he did look after our wounded down on Kokoda, because I remember, well, Bill Aquitania, who was a medical orderly, he was telling me about him treating Colonel Owen when he was hit. And Bill told me he had a torch, and Doc would want the torch switched on to see what he's doing. And every time he switched it on, a burst of Jap fire come through the top of the hut. Yeah. And Doc Vernon couldn't hear it, so he'd tell Bill off to keep it on. But that happened, and Bill told me how the Doc put a dab of iodine on Colonel Owen's brain, really. And well, that's all I know there.
Now,
Only for Doc Vernon, we wouldn't have had a doctor either. But then the RAP blokes were pretty efficient too. But the first time I saw Doc Vernon was when we were going over. He had the carriers lined up and he had quite a big tin of ointment, and each one was sticking his finger in and getting some and putting on their feet cuts. But Doc Vernon, he really looked after them too, which was just as well, or as best he could.
was the native carriers, were there very many on the track as you were going back?
Oh, yes. Oh, there's lots of them, and some of them seemed to come from different tribes. The hill boys, as we called them, they were a lighter colour, and they had fairly straight hair, compared with the ones round Moresby that had big bushy mop of hair. And the hill boys were more athletic looking. They were leaner, and I think too fairly free of malaria up in the mountains. But going over, we had plenty of tobacco and we'd give the carriers a smoke. When I remember at Isharava, we'd run out of tobacco. I was smoking bark and all sorts of stuff, which was pretty horrible. And I remember getting a stick of native tobacco, that's a twist, a leaf rolled up with molasses. When the natives smoked it, they had some newspaper and they laid the leaf on it and rolled it up. So there's paper and leaf, and it had burned. But we weren't wise to that. We still had cigarette paper, so I cut some of this up into little bits and put it in my cigarette paper. We had to twist each end or it'd fall out. I remember first draw I got half this cut up tobacco down my throat, so that wasn't successful. So we just went out. Another story too, I'll tell you about our smoke. When going back, when we were going through a Lolo, after we got out of the rest house, I never had a blanket or ground sheets or anything. That was all left at Isharava. And there was a hut there, evidently the RAP, the doctors had been treating wounded blokes there, and there was blood-stained blankets. So I grabbed a blanket, a bit blood-stained, but today I wouldn't poke it with a stick, but it was something to keep me warm in the dark. And anyhow, I remember before we got back to Aurora Creek, we came across a dump of army biscuits, tin butter, which hadn't been melted and set again, it was nice and fresh, and raspberry jam. So Hedley and I, starving hungry, we sat down there. We must have eaten for about half an hour or so until we got full, and then we just had to leave it. The carriers had evidently been given the order to get back. Anyhow, we never thought of taking a few whizzes. We were fully satisfied, so that was them. Anyhow, back at Aurora Creek, I think we might have spent the night there, but anyhow, just above the village was a bit of a spur run out, and this is open ground, and there had been a pit dug about 5 feet square and so deep, and I think it had been dug for a grave. Anyhow, we were to set up the mortar there, the three of us, and Bevan French, he came with us. I think he would die and have a go at the mortar because he had been the mortar lieutenant before he was put in charge of B Company. Anyhow, we're sitting in down this hole and the firing machine gun fires opened up again. The Japs was on our wheel, and we had no orders to fire or where to fire. And anyhow, Lieutenant French jumped out of the pit and back over the ridge to find out what was doing. And anyhow, it's getting pretty willing by now, and someone yelled out, "Mortars, get out!" And anyhow, we helped Don out, bunked him out, and as he just cleared the top side, the high side of our trench, a burst of machine gun fire hit the top of the trench, and Don was clear by then. Well then, Hadley and I had to get out. We couldn't stop there, so I managed to get out next, and I reached down and dragged Hadley after me, and we got over the ridge to safety behind us. And instead of going straight up the ridge, Aurora Creek down below, we went up on an angle and reached the track further down where the battalion was. And we had no idea where they were, so I wanted to keep going. And there's blokes from the 2nd, 16th Battalion there in positions all along the track, positioned to fire down towards the creek. I'd asked them, the 39th Battalion, they hadn't seen. Anyhow,
Met Damien Power on the track.
yes, after that, we caught up with Damien Power. He's getting along with a stick and a box camera on the back of him. And we got talking to Damien. He told us about how he was in Greece and Crete, and as he said, he got out of there. He said, I wasn't very brave there, but he was a brave man, Damien Power, just the same. And one of the nicest people you could ever meet to him. He spoke to us more or less man to man. We're a couple of scruffy young soldiers, you know, but no way did he talk down to us or anything.
And where did you meet the Salvation Army?
Oh, that was quite a while after this. This is after we left Manari, after the parade there, but before that, after we left Damien Power, we had to make a stand at Cargill. We were put in positions there, and that night it teemed rain all night. And by now I'd lost this blanket. Oh, that had happened and left in this hole at Aurora Creek, getting back to there. When we got back there, we'd left our packs there, or retrieved them or whatever was in them, and I had some tobacco in mine, which, boy, that was real good. We had a smoke, and then after we'd got out of this hole and a bit along the track, we decided to have a smoke. I didn't have it. It had fallen out of my packet, crouching in the hole at Aurora Creek. But anyhow, finally, at Cargill this night, it rained, it teemed all night. All I had was a little sandbag, which I stuck over my head a bit. We survived that, and next day we went up to Efogi, down the Great Gorge and up, and there we met up with the 2nd 27th Battalion, and they relieved us. We handed over our automatics and everything, and that was it. We moved back then until we got to Manari, where we spent the night. I remember Hadley and I getting there, and our clothes were stinking and everything, and some of the blokes there had been giving blokes new clothing and washing the others, and there were some of the shirts and shorts on some bushes drying. They were dry by now, so Hadley and I sort of reckoned a nice change of clothing would be nice. So we just helped ourselves and left our old one. No one was saying anything. It didn't matter much, I don't think. But anyhow, we were a lot more comfortable. And then we were to parade up in the centre of Manari, where Colonel Honour was going to address us.
I believe you led the parade into the ground.
Yes, Lieutenant French got us, called us up, and Hadley and I were up the front of the group, and we had to lead the march up to the centre of the village where Colonel Honor was going to address us. And anyhow, previous to this, we'd met Damien Pear, and he was wanting to take our photos, but he didn't have enough film, unfortunately. But anyhow, this was our chance to be on film, and we marched up, but he didn't take a film us marching up. But anyhow, we marched up and a left turn to be in line, and the Colonel Honor addressed us. He was a very, very good soldier, Colonel Honor. But anyhow, after that, we left turned to march out of Minari and Headley, and where Damien Perry also filmed that, but Headley and I were on the tail end. And that ended us up here being on film. We could have been film stars.
Well, you are now, and you probably look as young as you did then.
Oh, I wish I felt it. But anyhow, I don't remember much of the trip back. I was possibly in a daze, but I remember meeting up with the Salvation Army chap, and he had coffee and cake, which we got, which was very nice. The Salvation were always there. And I don't remember much until we got back to the track where the jeeps could go along. I remember them carting up supplies and slithering up the track. The deep mud, the dips were dragging in the mud, but anyhow the jeeps were getting through. And then I can't remember until we're back at Koitaki, I think. We got cleaned up, which we badly needed, and new uniforms and things. And there we had to do patrols, and I was there. I was made a section leader, same as Don, and Headley was Lieutenant French's baton. I didn't ask for stripes and didn't particularly want them, but I did as I was told, and I was a section leader. I remember Major Anderson inspecting our position, and I was able to tell him what my section was doing, where we were firing and all of that. And Mr. French told me next day the Major was very pleased with me, which I was happy enough with. And now,
were you given a rest at Koitaki and Port Moresby before your next operations?
No, not at that stage, but any rest, no way did I let you rest. I think I might have reckoned we'd be thinking too much what we'd been through, but they had us learning how to sight a rifle again. But looking back, I think that was all planned to keep us thinking, other than what we'd been through. Of course, we were pretty crook on that and wondered why we needed to learn to sight a rifle again, but there was method in their madness, and I think that's what that was all about. But no, we didn't, it was no holiday.
Yeah. How long was it before you were sent on to Gona?
Well, first we were sent down along the coast. I think it was Pyramid Point, and we dug positions there along our section, and it was at that stage we had a sports day, and running events and nude races and all sorts of things. Even the colonel was running. He was quite an athlete. And we had blokes bookmaking, they'd call it out the odds on honour, you know. No, why would you call him honour? He was colonel honour. But we reckoned later that was only to see how fit we were to go to Gona. Anyhow, at that stage we were inspected by General Blaming. And he's offsider, I suppose, and I think that was Brigadier Wooten. I'm not sure, but I think it was. But I remember lining up and General Blaming and followed by Brigadier Wooten. General with his overweight, big red nose, heavily powdered. Brigadier Wooten, I hope it was him, very obese, flopping along behind him, swatting his face with a long-haired brush, keeping the flies up, in a disinterested way, I thought. Anyhow, the General addressed us, and I can clearly remember part of this. He said, "I'm delighted with the parade. You have done big things, but I expect even bigger." And that was all I can remember. But I think too, I've only thought recently, maybe he's squaring off too for what he said about the 2nd 14th Battalion, because that was completely uncalled for. Those young blokes fought and died and never shirked a thing. These blokes sitting back had no idea what the track was like.
And was Gona in fact bigger?
Yes, I suppose it was. By now, I'd transferred back to the mortars, which I was happier with. And being a corporal, I was put in charge of a gun. And in my crew, I had my old corporal, Doug Reed, and another very nice bloke, Les Armitage. Both had been corporals, were taken, lost their position as mortar corporals because they refused to join the AIF. Not because of their ability, they were both terrific soldiers. And, well, I was given a job, I couldn't argue, but anyhow, they never showed any animosity to me. We were mates, and that was it, full stop.
How long were you at Gona?
At Gona, it took us about 10 days. We flew over, landed at Papua, then walked to Gona. At first we were to try and get along the coast to Sanananda, but found that impossible, and at last we were put into Gona. And I took over from another mortar corporal, and I think they were from the 2nd 31st, I think. Might have been the 2nd 33rd. But anyhow, they were glad to get out. I just about had them. That's where I was handed the Rangers for Gona, and he also rode on them to test everything.
And one of your tests was remarkably important. Could you share that?
Yes, it was. Of all the bombs we used a lot more bombs than I'd ever had. And we found one bomb that would have exploded in the barrel, and that would have been the end of us. But it went down a hole. And before each attack, we had to put over a barrage of mortar bombs on a pattern, and so many across and up the range and across again. And I think about 60 bombs, 10-pound bombs each time. I know the barrel was getting very hot. The buffering that took some of the recoil was smoking, ready to burn. And we had to put over smoke bombs. There's a whole lot of celluloid burning was coming out of the barrel and set the grass on fire around us. Well, I was giving fire orders and running around putting out fires, but the boys carried on. Having Les Armitage and Doug Reed working the mortar, they were a fantastic combination. I don't think there'd have been a better mortar crew anywhere, having those two blokes. So that was one thing we gained by them having to act as ordinary mortar bombs. I could direct the fire, but boys, I could use a mortar. So that was that was in the morning that day. Anyhow, the attack failed. I had to go through open ground, which was plain ridiculous, and they were to put on another attack in a day or so, and we were ready to put the barrage over when the attack was called off because the Air Force, which was supposed to come and dive bomb the Japs, didn't arrive. And the Colonel took that option to call it off. No way was he going to sacrifice his men, which the other field commanders were protesting about. But from further back, perhaps miles away from the action, we were getting orders that were just plain wrong. Anyhow, the final attack, Colonel Honor planned it, and it worked terrifically.
And I believe at the end of it all, most of the men suffered badly from illness.
Well, there was a lot of them had malaria, or as it turned out, scrub typhus. And at that stage, if you got malaria, that wasn't enough to be sent out. They were that short of men that they had to keep them there. I think the priority was the plane flying in supplies to Papua was ammunition came first, then men, then I think medical supplies and food was last. Although we were fed better then, we used to come up from behind the line, the carriers would bring it up, fairly warm, when we got a lot of Jap rice. And I remember, yeah, it was all right. We used to get powdered milk and mix with it with a bit of water and eat it. And I remember there were some odd looking grains of rice in it, so one day I picked it out, and they're weevil maggots, nearly half an inch long with heads and all of them, cooked up in the rice. Well, you couldn't pick them out, so you ate them. Going over from, well, the early part of it, I know we got a cut lunch to eat on the dinner time on the track. And, oh, did I mention the biscuit porridge we got?
No, you didn't.
As he's arrived, I'd dropped our food at my alibi now, and the biscuits, army biscuits, which are as hard as rocks, really, they just broke up into little granules, and they made porridge out of it, which was very good. I remember in action we even got, I even had dehydrated onions. I'd bring that up. Oh, and the bloke who used to bring our food down, he wouldn't come up to my position. I had to pass me thing down to me because I'm talking about this machine gun fire. And, well, bully beef and things he'd just throw up to me. I can't say. But, oh, we got bombed.
What were you saying about the cut lunch?
Oh, yeah, we got we got a cut lunch at some of those early villages. I can't remember. That'd be the villages closer to Moors because they could have managed to get bread up there, you know. And they might have been bully beef sandwiches or beans, cheese. It all tasted pretty good.
Do you still eat bully beef?
Well, no, I haven't had to buy a tin of that. I see it in the supermarkets, but I dodged that. When we was at, when I transferred from B Company back to the Mortars, I don't know whether we had better cooks or Major Anderson was under them. He was a bit of a stickler for things like that. Well, where we'd just get bully beef dished up, perhaps heated up, and a bit of vegetables warmed up out of tins. The bully beef there at Headquarter Company, they made a pie out of it, put a crust on, which was very nice. I remember we had trifle. The trifle was made with bread for the sponge. It was no wine, and we had but the fruit juice saturated them. The fruit was spread on top, and condensed cream. Why condensed cream isn't actually army rations, that when there was an allowance we could buy stuff like that. I don't know how it worked, but occasionally we got that, so I can always remember that. Another thing we did once, before we went over the mountain, this was when the Yanks had arrived at Port Moresby then, and we got a job one night to go in and unload their trucks coming from the wharf with food. And was unloaded at this depot. Well, they did their bully beef, but they had something like tinned ham. There was, for breakfast, they had an individual packet of cornflakes or whatever, tinned milk and stuff like that, and tinned grape juice, which we couldn't resist, so we loaded up our truck with that. But the little American sergeant in charge, we nearly drove him up the wall, just about running round in circles trying to stop us, but we just ignored him. The only disappointment that night, we'd heard the tin beer was coming off at midnight, and that's when our shift ended. So we didn't get into the tin beer, but for several days after that, we didn't bother going down for breakfast for our usual army ration. That would have been thrown out because we was independent.
I wonder whether you would pass the definition of being an Australian larrikin.
An Australian what?
Larrikin.
Well, I think we were.
I think
really. But war turns you into all sorts of things, you know. One thing I'm hearing now, they're talking about women on the front line. There's no way would I have that. God. If they were taken prisoner for a start, what had happened to them? I'd even be in danger of some of my own blokes. Because war does things to you. Yeah. No, I wouldn't have that. No doubt some of them would fight very bravely and everything, but I think they'd have suffered more than the blokes.
There are bigger issues there, aren't there?
Yeah, I know, but others can decide.
You got malaria in the end.
Well, after we took Gona, the boys copped the burial party. Then we had to go up to West Gona, and the battalion took West Gona with assistance from remnants of the 2nd, 14th and the likes, but mainly the 39th. We went back to Gona itself, it might have been there a day or so, and then we were to go round to Sanananda. Well, we went from Gona to Soputa, which was about halfway. The track was just knee-deep in mud, and we struggled through that. Got to Soputa where we spent the night. Next morning, I woke up, I was shivering and cold. So I went to the RAP. I reckon I had malaria and was to go straight back. Well, you set off, just walking, and there's jeeps, American jeeps running from the Buna area and to Papua, taking wounded blokes. They might have had, the windscreen was flattened out. They'd have 2 stretcher cases on the front mud guards and sitting on the bottom, and blokes crowded all over them. Ute, and they picked us up as she was walking. And when you got to Papua, I had tents and things there. You were given a number, and when your number was called, you were ready to go on the plane. Of course, the badly wounded blokes got on first, and you mightn't get a plane for a while, but anyhow, eventually I got a plane, and from there back to Moresby, and from there to hospital. The hospitals were terribly overcrowded because there was so much sickness and wounded. The beds were only, I don't know, 2 or 3 feet apart. A lot of them had a wounded bloke underneath on a stretcher. I remember the nurses would start washing about 3 o'clock in the morning, which they kept going for days on end.
And yet it was your best Christmas, I believe.
Yeah. Christmas Day came and I was sick. I couldn't eat or anything. They tempted me with jelly. That was quite a delicacy up there. But I couldn't eat. But to this day, I reckon that was the best Christmas I ever had, because I reckon I had a better chance of getting better from malaria than a Jap bullet.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And that's the end of the action in New Guinea. But in reflection, thinking it through over these many, many years, what probably is the most important thing that has come, that you have thought about, that you could share with us and with people in years to come?
Oh, it's simply that what a terrible thing war is. And it all ends, and what has anyone gained? War in our enemy country, life has gone on in our country, in our enemy country. We become friends, and that's about it. It's just so ridiculous.
Yeah. Thank you very much indeed.